Welcome in the legendary voice of the Cleveland Guardians. It is the one, the only, Tom Hamilton.
Hey, Tommy, good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you guys. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the kind words, Mike.
Tom, you're aware of something called Q rating. I mean, you're working in the broadcast field. Q rating is basically a quotient that combines recognizability and likability. Mm-hmm. And I think Mike's introduction is dead on, Tom. And how lucky are we in Cleveland to have not one but two? I think if you were able to take a Q rating of Tom Hamilton and Jim Donovan, they would break the Q rating scale. They would both be. I mean, they all know them. They all love them. There's nobody. I've never heard anybody say, "Yeah, Tom Hamilton, he's not good at calling a baseball game." We just can't do it.
You haven't read my mail, Jay. You haven't read my mail.
No, all honesty, when was the last time you received a negative letter, email? I know you probably don't do social media, but come on, Tom. No one's saying anything bad about you.
No, you know what? And look, guys, we're all in this business. And, now I'm a lot older than you three, but there was no such thing as social media. There was no such thing as cell phones when I got into the business. So I'm dating myself, but I mean, look, you're never going to please everybody. I get plenty of people that complain. I get it. But at the end of the day, if your bosses like you, if the majority of your audience likes you, and if you feel that you've put in an honest day's work, I think that's all you can go by. It was fun listening to you guys, excuse me, on the social media aspect. I don't get it. I never have. I think it's a cesspool. And I just I feel bad what it's done for athletes, because I think there are a lot of athletes that have gotten so caught up in it. I've talked to coaches. I did Big Ten basketball on television for 25 years until a few years ago, and it's one of the most difficult things they had to deal with prior to everything else that has now transpired here with the transport portal and the NIL and whatnot. But you'd have guys going into the locker room at halftime to check their social media. And you just can't live your life worrying about what other people think, because then you're going to have a miserable life. But I think it really does impact a lot of guys, and not in a positive way. So, my wife is my best critic, and she's not afraid to let me know when she disapproves. So I've been smart enough to listen to her and keep my job.
Well, you already knew this, but you married the right woman. That's all need
right.
That. We all need that.
Tom, we go right from social media to the new thing around, legalized gambling. We got the Shohei Ohtani thing, and it potentially hasn't. We haven't heard gambling like that since Pete Rose and different things like that. The league's doing an investigation. What was your initial thoughts when you heard about it, and what are your thoughts on where it may go after this an investigation?
Yeah, those are great questions, and I think all of pro sports, this is their biggest fear. I mean, we've had how many football players here that have been banged? I'm trying to think of the wide receiver from Ohio State that transferred, right?
Yep. Jameson Williams.
Yeah, and so it's going to impact, and has already impacted, every sport. To your point, look, I don't know enough about the Shohei case, and I don't know enough about gambling. Again, it's something I don't do. I have plenty of vices. That's not one of them. Common sense would tell me there's a lot more to this story from the standpoint of, how does an interpreter who's making whatever get $4.5 million behind with a bookmaker? I mean, those bookmakers expect to be paid at some point. So again, it's whether it's baseball, football, basketball, hockey, we've opened Pandora's box now when it comes to gambling. And whether you're against it or for it, the bottom line is it's here, and you're not putting the genie back in the bottle. And this is going to be an ongoing thing that will concern all pro sports leagues, because as we all know in our business, whether you're a broadcaster or whether you're a sports entertainment facility, if you don't have credibility, you're done. And so, we can't have people wondering about the games, the outcomes. Remember the Tim Don Guy case, the NBA official.
Yeah.
It seems like that was another lifetime ago. But I mean, there's so much, the thing, I think the Cleveland Plain Dealer did a story. Obviously, I've been out in Arizona here for quite a while, but I thought I saw it, was it last week or what now with the Cavs coach, Coach Bickerstaff?
Yes.
And the people that are now, taking it out on him or taking it out on players when a bet goes wrong, these are all of the unintended consequences that come with what we're dealing with now. And guys, I'm fearful of what's coming down the road. I really am.
Yeah, Tom, before we turn to talk to the Guardians and their upcoming season, I'll just throw one thing on top of what you just said. There was a clip of social media that was going around a couple of weeks ago. I brought it to Mike's attention, and we showed it on the program. There was a player in the NBA who was sitting on a bench, and there was a fan who was sitting courtside right behind him and said, I'm 1 3-pointer shy of, what was it, a $10,000 hit?
I think it was 10,000.
And the player looked at him and mouthed, I got you, and told the coach he wanted to go back in the game. He went back in the game, immediately shot a 3 and made it.
Yeah.
And it was like, we've heard these stories, but it also shows just what kind of impact these guys can actually have, where they can take the team, the goal of the team, which is obviously to win, and just say you're going to put that to the side for 5 nights, and you're going to shoot 30 times so you can make sure that you eclipse whatever the overline is for your point score. There is so much money to be had, and unfortunately, as we know, whenever there's big money involved, there's also going to be corruption. And quickly, I'll just get your thought on this before we move on. As much as I think the Pete Rose thing was so punitive, and I love Pete as a player and what he meant to the game, and as much as I hate that he'll probably won't get in while he's alive, I do think that it sent the clear message that this is the cardinal rule. You cannot break it, and if you do, you are excommunicated from the sport forever. And what the NFL has done, and some of the other leagues, when they've caught guys breaking this rule, is they've slapped them on the wrist with a 4-game suspension or a 6-game suspension, and that just tells every other player that's watching, I can do this, make piles of money, and still have my job.
Jay, I'm 100% in agreement. I've never had any sympathy for Pete Rose. I loved watching him play when he played because he played the game the right way. But that has been in every clubhouse as you leave to go down that tunnel to get onto the field. That's the last thing a lot of clubhouses you ever saw about gambling. Yeah. And so it was clear. And I always loved the Pete Rose backers that said, well, he never bet on the Reds to lose.
Yeah, that means nothing.
What message do you think he sent on the days he didn't bet?
That's right. He's telling the bookies, Pete doesn't like his chances tonight.
So, you know what? Hey, we raised 4 kids, and I had the same lessons from my mom and dad. There are consequences for your actions. I don't want to hear your excuse. Right. Deal with the consequences. You knew what you were getting into. Like I said, I have no sympathy whatsoever for Pete Rose. I have no sympathy for anybody that breaks these rules. They know going in what's at stake, and I'm afraid, and I hope I'm wrong, but I'm afraid this is going to become a bigger and bigger story in all sports, and it could be the thing that could ruin our games because you just feel there are too many people that can be compromised.
Yeah. Tom, first of all, hi. It's always a pleasure when you are on the show, Mr. OG Tom Hamilton. The Cleveland Guardians, they get their season started Thursday with a 4-game series against the Oakland A's. And Stephen Vogt essentially is inheriting the same core that Terry Francona had. Of course, we're going to see a lot of the young prospects this year because Chris Antonetti says, we want to see what we got. What can Stephen Vogt get out of this 2024 Guardians team that Terry Francona couldn't get out of them last season?
Well, one, I think Stephen Vogt's got a chance to be really good and a really good manager. But that being said, Cleveland's issue wasn't Tito. Cleveland's issue was injuries. And anytime that Cleveland under Tito didn't win, it was usually because we had massive injuries to the starting rotation. And that was the same thing last year. No Tristan McKenzie for basically the whole year. Shane Bieber missed the majority of the year. And at the end of the day, this ball club's margin for error is not that great. They can't afford those kind of injuries. Now, if the starting pitching stays healthy for the most part, then this ball club's got a chance to hang in there because, in all honesty, guys, the American League Central is by far the weakest division in all of baseball. It hasn't always been that way. People forget Kansas City and Cleveland represented the American League 3 straight years in the World Series, in 2014, 15, and 16. But, boy, since then, we've had a lot of rebuilding going on with a lot of ball clubs. Again, I think Tito is as good a manager as the game has ever seen. But also, no matter how good you are as a manager, you can't overcome a multitude of injuries to starting pitching. You just don't have enough of it. So I think what's going to be interesting, and you brought up a good point on seeing the young kids play. Look, guys, the most stunning development for me was Miles Straw, now becoming the Columbus Clippers starting center fielder. I mean, this guy's still owed $19 million. He has 3-4 years left on his contract. And that's how much they want to see a guy like Tyler Freeman play. They want to see this youngster they got from the Yankees, Estevan Florial. I feel bad for Miles Straw because I still think he's one of the elite center fielders in the game. And what you hope is Miles can go back to Columbus and figure it out from an offensive standpoint because this guy is a major leaguer. But, he ran into a numbers crunch here, and I think it tells you how much Cleveland wants to see some of these young kids perform. Again, I think power is going to be limited. I also think, guys, I know we're sitting here today, whatever it is, March 24th. I think by the middle of May, the 1st of June, this roster could look different. Yeah. I don't think Chase DeLauders is very far away. I don't think Kyle Manzardo is very far away as far as young players that could come up here and help this ball club. And so, I don't think you're going to see guys get 6 months to prove whether they can play or not. They're going to get an extended amount of time to prove themselves. But there are other guys knocking on the door that could make this thing very interesting if guys get off to slow starts.
Tom, I think something I found interesting when I was in Goodyear this spring was the noticeable shift in philosophy at the plate. I was talking to Will Brennan, and I asked him, is this something that the team has outwardly talked about? And he said, you know what, it is. Obviously, the last couple of years, it's been a contact-oriented team that ran the bases well, but that just did not have power. And I love the way Will phrased it. He said, look, just look around baseball and see what's going on. The teams that are winning are hitting the long ball. So, yes, we've had discussions as a team to be less afraid to go up there and take a healthy hack. You're going to swing and miss. It's part of baseball. Have you noticed, and I hate to compare, they are apples to apples, but they're hitting for more power this spring than they did last spring. And it does seem like there's something to this, that this is a new paradigm shift under Stephen Vogt, where I think they're saying, go up there and swing. You're going to miss, but we gotta hit home runs if we hope to have any success at all.
Yeah, I think, Jay, the big point there is early in the count, they want guys to look for a pitch that they can drive and do some damage with, to your point. Now, one, I don't think we're a home run hitting team. I don't think we will be. But that doesn't mean you can't hit doubles. We've never been a big home run hitting team since obviously the 90s. I mean, We've had ball clubs that could hit home runs much more so than this ball club. But just as big a deal as hitting for extra bases, getting that double that we have to get away from. It takes us 5 base hits to score 2 runs in an inning. Get a few guys on and score 2 runs with a double and look to do damage early in the count. Now, that being said, it's a fine line. One, they don't want guys to get so defensive about swinging and missing that all they want to do is put the ball in play and it ends up being soft contact. However, if you get so enamored with trying to hit for power and you're not a power hitter, then you're not going to be successful either. So you got to walk that fine line. And, Jay, you've been around enough in spring trainings. It always sounds good in spring training. And then come March 28th, when all of a sudden you're playing in a ballpark that's got 3 decks instead of 1, and you've got a major league pitcher out on the mound that is competing to get you out rather than just working on things, that philosophy can go out the window in a hurry. Well, I think it'll be interesting to see how convicted they are, because the old adage is everyone's got a plan when they leave the on-deck circle. A lot of guys give up on that plan 1 pitch into the at-bat. So, that's going to be kind of an ongoing thing this year. But it was a point of emphasis, and, we'll see. We'll see. I think at the end of the day, the power is going to have to come from, the usual suspects, Jose Ramirez and Josh Naylor. But I do think there are enough guys on this club. You mentioned Will Brennan. I mean, gosh, a couple of years ago in the minor leagues, he had like 35, 36 doubles. Now, I know it's the minor leagues, but if you can get that kind of productivity, then the home runs aren't that big a deal.
Tom, speaking of Jose Ramirez, thoughts on what you feel like this 2024 season will be like for Jose? And then a follow-up question to that, just to get your opinion. We've had conversations on this show that Jose gave the Guardians a discount, and that it's our opinion that the Guardians haven't done much to really build a competitive team around him. To that, you say what?
Goodbye. Thanks for having me, guys. And I'd like to keep working.
Hey, sometimes you say a lot without saying nothing at all, Tom. Much respect, man.
I think there have been, obviously, this is a ball club that is limited as far as financial revenues. I think it would really hurt a lot of ball clubs, not just Cleveland this offseason, was the local television contract with Bally's. If you look around, what are there, 14 teams, I think, out of the 30 that have their games locally broadcast by Bally's or whatever they're called. And so because of all of the financial issues that Bally's and Sinclair have had, that really hamstrung a lot of ball clubs, including the world champion Texas Rangers.
Right.
They were limited financially with what they could do. So I think this offseason was an aberration. Look, Cleveland's never going to be at the top of the food chain when it comes to, being able to pay certain salaries. At the end of the day, the biggest difference baseball has with the NFL, everybody's on a level playing field. To me, the beauty of the NFL is I think in Chris Antonetti, Mike Chernoff, and his people, there's not a smarter or better run front office in baseball. But they're competing with a payroll of, say, 90 to 100 million, and the Dodgers can go out and spend 300 million. Well, I'm from Wisconsin. The Cleveland Browns or the Dallas Cowboys or the New York Giants, they can't spend more than the Green Bay Packers. And that's why front offices make such a difference in the NFL, because everybody's on the same playing field financially. That's the biggest discrepancy that we have in our game. To your point about Jose Ramirez, yes. But you know what? The beauty of Jose, he's happy. He was happy the day he signed that contract. He knew he was leaving money on the table, but he did not want to go out and become a free agent. He wanted to stay in Cleveland. And because of that, he's going to become one of the greatest players to ever wear an Indians/Guardians uniform. I do think, though, that there's some help right around the corner. And I'm not just kind of trying to be Pollyanna right now. I think Chase DeLauters is really close. I think Kyle Manzardo is really close. The ball club has the number 1 pick in the draft. And what we have seen lately, guys, especially – now, Cleveland's never had the number 1 pick in the draft ever. They got lucky because of the lottery. But they've got a chance to get a big-time impact college bat. And what we have seen here recently is when the teams like the Baltimore Orioles or somebody like that that's losing 110 games, they get that guy. They're in the major leagues quickly when they're coming from college. So I think this dynamic could change quite a bit. I think what's going to be interesting going forward, nobody talks much about it, is Shane Bieber. For an organization. Yeah, for an organization that prides itself on starting pitching, and rightfully so, they've developed more than arguably anybody in the game. Right now, I don't see a lot of guys coming up. I don't see that next wave yet. A lot of those guys are here: Gavin Williams, Logan Allen, Tanner Bybee. But Shane Bieber looks as good this spring as he's looked at any point in his career. He'll be a free agent. And, man, I would hate to lose this guy. I think he's a leader on this ball club. I think he leads that rotation. And those young kids have a guy to really, look up to and follow. That's kind of been, if you look at it, CC Sabathia had guys to follow. And then CC Sabathia became that leader. And then it was Cliff Lee. And then it was Corey Kluber. And all these guys have had that one lead pony that kind of has ushered in the next wave of really good starting pitching. And that's Shane right now.
Yeah, you answered my question because I think he's the linchpin to the whole season. If he can stay healthy and they can stick around and be in this race at the All-Star break and into July, it makes it really difficult for them to move on when they have a chance to win the division. And then after this season, who knows what happens. He probably signs as a free agent. Tom, we got to let you go. We'll be listening to you every day and every night. We hate that they're starting on the West Coast. That's garbage. We got to wait 8 games before we can watch our team. I think that's ridiculous. It's awful, but it is what it is. You'll be great this year. We can't wait to hear you. And go Guardians, baby. Go Guardians.
Thanks so much. Thanks, guys. Enjoyed it. Have a good one.
Thanks,
too,
Tom.
man.
I literally could talk all day with this man because his baseball knowledge is unparalleled.